Hi, welcome to Quirky Queen's Journals. My name's Kirsten. So today I am doing an experiment on the jelly plate with heavy body, fluid and high flow acrylic paint. So the first experiment is a single pool. So the high flow's on the left, fluid in the middle and heavy body on the right. So this is purely experimental at home. I mean, there's lots of variables that are not accounted for. So it's really just my findings on this day today. So this came up as you would expect, more consistently covered on the heavy body side and less so on the high flow side. So the second pool we are going to do is we're going to mix heavy body transparent paint in with the high flow, the fluid and the heavy body. So I've chosen yellow and blue purely because they'll create green when they're mixed together, so they'll work well mixed together. And so this one came up, obviously the dark blue and the yellow heavy body mixed together is made a darker colour. And it's a bit of a lighter green in the fluid section, and in the high flow section the colours are more separated, but I think that's because I didn't mix them so well. So there was more yellow apparent. Now I'm using layout paper here. I was trying it as a cheap alternative to print-making paper, but I did tear it there. It's the only time I have torn it. And you can see it there. Just haven't mixed that high flow enough. So we're going to repeat the process, but instead of yellow heavy body, we'll use yellow fluid this time. And again, we're just putting out high flow on the left, fluid in the middle and heavy body on the right. These are just new, these fluid paints, so I'm having to open them all up as I use them. So the reason I'm doing this as well is because I very much have only ever used the heavy body paints. I have used the high flow paints, but never on their own, really. Well, I have used them on their own on paper, but not on the jelly plate. I tend to use them mixed in with the heavy body paint on the jelly plate. So I thought it would be good to see how they work with each other and independently of each other. So I really like that result. I think you can see quite clearly the differences between the three of them. So now we're going to repeat this experiment with yellow high flow. So I'd never really used the high flow acrylic on its own on the gel plate because it beads. But I think if you give it a chance, that beading, you can use it. I will be investigating further into how it will be with stencils and, other types of stuff you do on the jelly plate. I'm determined to get to know how these three paints act so that I can then choose one wisely depending on what effect I want. You definitely get more of a textured effect with the high flow, but you get more of a consistent effect with the heavy body. And you can see there as well, just the way that the differences from texture to lack of texture. So we're moving on to a different type of experiment. So again, we're going putting out high flow on the left, fluid in the middle, heavy body on the right. But this time, what we're going to do is we're going to let them dry, and then we're going to lift them with heavy body on top. So I've cut the drying time out. I mean, the drying times were really anywhere from half a minute to 2 minutes for each one that I do. And I had to replace that heavy body because I hadn't put enough out in the first place. I find because obviously paints are very, very expensive, I find that I am reluctant to put too much out in the plate. I do tend to be a bit miserly with them, and it's not always in my favour doing that, but they are very expensive. So this is Sennelier Cad Yellow Lemon. And again, I set the paper on top of the gel plate longer than I show in the video as well. That's probably 30 seconds to 2 minutes as well. Probably not as much as 2 minutes actually, because these are drying very fast. So what's interesting here is the heavy body. The yellow is, the heavy body paint is the dominant colour in the high flow, but less so with the other heavy body. So we're repeating it again, but this time we're going to use an opaque heavy body. So I've put a picture of the paints that I've used at the end, and also the layout paper. Now I chose the layout paper because it was cheap. I got 80 sheets of A2 for £9 out of Hobbycraft, and it's 50 GSM, so I'm hoping it's a stronger alternative to tissue paper, but it's very, very smooth, so it should give more clarity on what you're lifting. So this is titanium buff opaque heavy body on top of the high flow fluid and heavy body phthalo blue. And you can see in the middle section at the top that I've took too much of the titanium buff off. So the paper actually sticks to the top of the middle section when I pull it back off, because there wasn't enough paint left there. But you can still see the effect. At the end of the day, that's what this video is about. So again, you can see the graduation. The heavy body is much darker. It's a much more all over colour. And you've got a lot more texture, and the heavy body the heavy body paint becomes the dominant colour. So there wasn't really much difference between the opaque and the transparent. But I think that these paints used with each other are going to really add a lot of variety, especially to my more abstract paintings. So this time we are doing the pools with the fluid paints, and I tried this twice and it didn't work. I think that my paints were drying too fast. It's a warm day here, which is unusual. I've not got any experience with the fluid paints, and so yeah, especially on top of the heavy body, they didn't pull well at all on that. But the high flow pull's okay in that, so I think it's me that's the issue, and we need to look at this more. I need to look at this more. And I think as well, I don't put enough out because they're just tiny little bottles. And it was £34 for 10 bottles, so I'm a bit precious about them. But I'll need to get over it. There's no point in having them and not using them properly. So you can see there that braying back over it it was just lifting back off, and that heavy body paint was dry. So you could see it was a bit of a disaster. So we're just going to go in with the titanium buff on the top and lift it anyway and see what it looks like. But I will say that the effects are very interesting. You get some really interesting results, and that at the end of the day is what matters. I just think it'll be interesting to just be layering these different types of paints in different ways with each other. So that's them there. First pool, titanium buff pool. And we're going to try again with the fluid acrylics. We're going to use white this time, I think. So again, just remember that once I've rolled out the blue with the brayer, that I let it dry for between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. And then when I put the paper on, that I'm also letting that sit for a while, for approximately 30 seconds to probably 90 seconds. So I have put on more this time as well, as you can see. The same thing happens again. I don't know whether I'm over brayering it as well. If I'd be better just being a lot gentler with the brayer when I'm going over it. But at least we got more paint off this time, and you can see the graduation effect there. So now we're going to repeat the process with high flow. So I think the high flows are similar to Liquitex acrylic inks. I have Liquitex acrylic inks, and they are similar, but I do think that the acrylic inks are maybe slightly more fluid. So we're using the white high flow because I had better luck with the white fluid, I think. Now, I can't be certain if I pressed the brayer a bit lighter there, and that's why it didn't come off. But I was happy with that result. I love the texture that you get with the more fluid. So this is the last one, I think. And what we're doing is we're doing 3 layers of high flow on the left, 3 layers of fluid in the middle, and 3 layers of heavy body on the right. And then we're going to pull it off with heavy body paint. So we're letting this dry, and then we're going to use burnt sienna. New bottle. So what I will say overall about these experiments is that there's lots of variables that affect it on the day. The mood of the person doing the work, the temperature of the environment that you're working in, your experience with the paints. There's just lots and lots of variables that, that happen. But it does look like heavy body does give a more consistent overall colour. It will be more dominant against the fluid paints colour-wise, but the more fluid paints are given some great textures. And I think that in them all, having these different variety of paints can only be beneficial to your artwork. It can only add variety. It can only help you create different types of artwork, different feelings in your art. So this is an opaque sky blue from Amsterdam. And I chose this because it was kind of still a light colour, but different enough to what had already been put on. So the high flow side pulled up very easily. The fluid pulled up quite easily, and then I had to wait quite a long time to pull up the heavy body. And I think it's just the thickness of the layers that have been put on. So that's another thing as well. the time differences between the different types of paints. But even between the fluid and the high flow, you can see there's a difference in the types of patterns you're getting, and the amount of colour tones that are showing through. And also the layout paper, I think, has done pretty well, because I would not be able to pull this amount of layers off with tissue paper. And it does give you, it does give you some very good details in the patterns. So these are the materials that I have used, and this is the layout pad. And I just want to say thanks very much for watching. This won't be the last of this type of experiments, because I do like to get to know the paints. And I hope to see you soon, and I hope you enjoyed. Take care, bye.